Hey, it's Keen Souls here, and in today's video we'll be doing an ultimate guide for TSB the ship bot. In this video I'll be going over all of the features of TSB, also how I do my profiles, how I jig my information. Now this video can be used for anybody who's looking to get the bot, any beginners, or maybe you already use the bot and you're looking to pick up some new information, then this video will be for you. But getting started here, this is the main interface for TSB. We're on the first tab, which is the task screen. Here's where you create your task. You can see your task and start them, stop them. You have a few options here. Starting at the top left, you can filter your task. You can search for a specific account for a task, or you can also search by status. Let's say you have a couple tasks that might have had the account reset. You can type that in here, find those accounts, and delete them out of your task list. Export, you can export your task. This is good if you're maybe moving from one computer to another. You can export the file, saved as a .json file, basically just transmits text. Import, complete opposite. You want to import your task to another instance. Go ahead and click that. New task is where you create your task. We'll go over that in a second. Start all is where you'll click to start all your tasks. Also, if you select a few, it'll say start selected. Stop all will stop all your tasks, will stop selected. Delete all will delete all of them, or delete selected. Edit all will edit all, or edit selected. This is used now if, let's say, for example, you want to edit the link for all of your tasks or change the sizing for all of them. You can go ahead and click that. Create a new task. You go over here to the top right, click new task. Region will be for the region for the product you're going for. For me, it's always United States. Product link, you can get that directly from Nike.com or from your cook group or from TSB's Discord server. You want to make sure that the link is valid. Just because if it's not, then you'll get some errors, so double and triple check that. Sizing, you have a few options. You can do a range, or you can do random. So the format would be, let's say we're going for size 10, 10 and a half, and 11. You do 10, comma, 10.5, comma, 11.5 for half sizing. Doing this will have all your tasks go for these specific sizes. Now, you can also do random. That'll be RA for random, or you can leave it blank. That'll do random as well. There's also some other options like first available or last available, but you don't need to really worry about those. Profiles, this is where you select your profiles. Think of the profile as the information that's being put onto the Nike account or to submit your entry for the product that contains your billing and shipping information. Here you'll see all your profiles loaded. I have none loaded because I cleared them for the purpose of this video. You also have the option to click select all, or you can select them one by one. Proxy list, this is where you select the proxies for your tasks. Here you can select one, or you can select multiple, or select all. I use residential proxies, never really have an issue. You can use residentials. Just make sure you're using it from a good provider. I use Hollow and Live, they're really good. You can also use ISP proxies. They're a lot faster, have less errors, but they can be a little costly, especially if you're running a lot of tasks. You can also select multiple providers or multiple proxies here. And this is recommended, especially if you're going for a hype drop. And let's say, one proxy provider might go down on that day. Make sure you diversify. You have a diverse pool of proxies, I should say. So you can select more than one provider, for example, and this will distribute the proxies evenly amongst the tasks. Accounts. Here you can select your Nike accounts. Nike accounts are required when running TSB or going for a product. Here you can select them one by one. Also select all. At the bottom here you have a few options. Require login by default is checked. Accounts have to log in order for you to go for the product, so you have to leave that checked. Schedule tasks. You can set a specific time for the task to schedule to start. You have a few modes here. NSWBA. Basically, that's the main mode you're going to use if you're going for any product on sneakers. NWBA is if you're going for any product on Nike.com. Both these modes are browser-based. NSA, also going for products on Nike.com. This is not browser-based. NRM is specifically for restocks. But for the most part, you'll be using NSWBA for any sneakers products. Refill Nike information. Basically, what this will do is it will refill the profile information, which contains your shipping address, onto the Nike accounts and override anything that you have on there. This is good if you have new accounts that you just loaded that have no information saved. You want to make sure this is ticked. Or if you recently changed your profiles, check that as well. That way, that new information is put on the accounts and put into the entry. Headless, This basically will run a headless task, meaning a browser won't open. Recommend that you do this just because it's less demanding on your computer. You'll click create new task. That'll create your task here. You'll see them. You'll be able to start them. A few things I do is whenever I start my task, I usually run around 200 plus. I do 50 at a time. I don't start all just because that's too demanding on the CPU for the computer or for your server. I start 50, wait for them to successfully go to sleep for their status, then start another 50. This gives me time, to check any, statuses for them, make sure there's no errors. Also, if I got to swap out proxies or accounts, I have time to do that. I do my start task. I start them usually an hour before the drop, 45 minutes to an hour, especially on a hype drop. You don't have to do it that far, ahead. You can do it 30 minutes. I just like to do that just so I encounter less errors and I have time to swap things out. And then moving along here to accounts, this is where you will load your Nike accounts. Like I said before, Nike accounts are required to run TSB for botting Nike. Here you load your Nike accounts. You can either, if you have a generator, you can generate them, or if you have an account provider and you purchase some accounts. I get my accounts from Astro Accounts, performed very well for me. I'll leave a link in the description. Once you get that account or those accounts from your provider, you click new account and paste them right here. If you're pasting them from a text format. The format that they'll be in will be email, semicolon, password. So for example, johndoe@gmail.com, semicolon, then the password, let's say it's 12345, and that'll be the format that you put the accounts in. You can just copy and paste them here. Down here you can click show password, create new account, that'll load the accounts into TSB. You have some other options like exporting your accounts, importing. If you're going from one instance or one computer to another, you would use these. Right here is your default proxy list. Now this is used for performing any actions on your accounts. Also for the calendar, it'll be using whatever proxy list you have generated here or selected here to generate that calendar. You want to make sure that you have a proxy list here selected, especially if you're checking multiple accounts. You don't want to be using your local IP address where you might get those accounts clipped. Also, if you're on a server, you might encounter errors whenever loading the calendar. So you want to make sure you have a default proxy list selected here. Filter, you're able to filter and find specific accounts, whether you search for the name or for the email address. You can type that up here and find those accounts specifically. Coming down here to the bottom, you have a few options. Check all. The flow that it does this is basically it's going to check the account. So it'll log into the account, check the mobile verification, and make sure the account is good. If the account is good, over here underneath status, in green, it'll say the word Gucci, just means the account is valid. Also, when doing this, if you click check all, it'll check all the accounts in the list. Or if you select accounts, it'll only check the ones selected. Access all will check the access, early access for the accounts, for the ones you have selected, or all if you click access all. Stop all will stop the operations being performed here. Let's say, for example, you're checking all of your accounts. You can stop all by clicking stop all and it'll stop the operation. Same thing for access all or orders all. It'll basically just stop the operation for whatever you're performing here. Orders all will check all of the orders for the accounts. This is good if, let's say, for example, you hit recently and you want to check to see what account hit and you want to get that order number. Click orders all. It'll pull that order number and pull it over here to the orders tab. Set password all will change the password for the accounts you have selected or all the accounts. Let's say you have a catch-all and let's say you recently changed the password on 20 accounts. Select those 20, click set password all, and it'll change it here in TSB. It's only changing the information in TSB, not actually changing the password on the account on Nike. Delete all will delete the accounts or delete whatever ones you have selected. Reset, checking this box and clicking on account and performing the action. This will delete any information on the account, like your shipping information or your billing information. Moving along here, profiles. This is where you will load your profiles onto TSB. Profile just basically contains like your name, phone number, shipping, and billing information. That information is used on a task and on the Nike account and filled into the entry for whenever you're going for a product. So when I do profiles, I usually do them on AYCD and then I import them. You just go over here to import. You can also export from one instance or one computer to another, or you can just create a fresh one in TSB. There's nothing wrong with that. So one thing to keep in note here is whenever botting Nike, each profile has to be unique. If you're using the same information on multiple profiles, entries will get filtered out. You won't be able to get anything. Profile name, and I'll show you what I mean by changing that information, how I jig specifically. Jigging just basically means changing your information to make it unique on each profile. That way it looks like a authentic entry and from another person. Profile name could be anything. Let's say John 1. Phone number. This phone number could be anything. This phone number does not have to match the phone number used for the mobile verification for the account. I've never had an issue not having them matched, but you do want to make sure at least the zip code is or the area code is valid to whatever state, city you're in. This information also has to be jigged and changed, so you want to make sure each profile has a different phone number, but keep the area code the same. Card number has to be different on each account, cannot be the same. The way to achieve this is with a virtual credit card provider. Here in the States, we have Privacy, where you can use Capital One Eno, which is also another virtual credit card provider. That will allow you to generate multiple virtual credit cards to use here on TSB. You want to make sure they're all different. I know some people may say you can run 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 for your ratio. I do 1 to 1 just to keep it safe, so I don't get filtered out. But some people have hit doing 1 to 5, but I just like to keep it safe doing 1 to 1. Each account or each profile is a different credit card number. Here, expiration date for the card, CVV, self-explanatory. This right here will be your billing information. So let's say, for example, John Doe. That'll be for the name. Address, let's say our address is 123 Main Street. Let's say we live in an apartment. Let's say it's unit, or better yet, let's say apartment, abbreviated that, apartment 3. Country will be whatever country you're in. You do not want to change this. Make sure it's valid. Zip code will be your zip code, also something you don't change. Let's just make something up here. State will be whatever state you're in. Say Maryland, MD, it's abbreviated. City will be whatever city, say main city. This also you don't change. Now this is where it gets tricky, and this is where it's important for you to make sure you change this correctly. So as I mentioned, you want to make sure each profile has different information. Changing that information is a process called jigging. It basically means you're changing the information on each profile. Before, I used to do 3 random characters in front or after the street number. So for example, let's say like this, and then at the end as well, like that. Before, that used to work. For some people it still does, but what I found out is Nike caught on to that. It doesn't work for me anymore. So what I do instead is I misspell amongst my profiles. So for example, let's say we had another N. Let's say for street, say we had another T. This is misspelling it. Now this looks like another address. This one is harder for Nike to catch on to. This is how I jig. I feel like this is the most effective way to jig your information, to make your entries look different and looks like another, new entry. Here too, you would jig line 2 as well. So apartment, you can spell it out. You can misspell it. 3, you can do 3A. Like I said before, you don't want to change anything down here, but just, get creative with this. Don't add any random characters like some people suggest. It's just not going to work. Just misspell it, add, extra letter, take a letter out, whatever you may need to do, just to make sure that it's unique. Here you click this, same as shipping. It'll just fill this information down into the shipping part. I recommend doing that, especially if you're using a virtual credit card. It doesn't matter. It'll check out either way, no matter what's in here. And then you go over here to create new profile. You'll create the profile. Generate fake address. We'll just make a fake address just for the purpose of testing. Once that's done, you'll see the profile here. Moving along, this is the proxy screen. Here you'll see all your proxies. This is pretty much self-explanatory. You can load your proxies. Let's say you just bought, a proxy plan from a provider. You'll generate those proxies. Come over here to new proxy list. Name it, and then load your proxies here. Shown here is the different formats. It's usually IP address. If the user authenticated, then you have like a password. If it's IP authenticated, then it'll just be the IP address. Just paste your proxies here. You will make sure you generate them with your provider. If you're using ISPs and you're using a server, make sure that it's user authenticated, or else you're gonna have to get the IP address from the server each time that you start it up, or your proxies won't work. So just keep that in mind. With residential, it doesn't matter. Just go ahead and paste them in here. Split proxies will split the proxies one by one, line by line. So let's say, for example, I loaded 100 proxies in here. It'll make a proxy group for each one of those 100 proxies. I never use that feature. I just load them in here, click create new proxy list. Checking format will just check the format of how you put them in here, make sure it's valid. Once you load it, it'll load here. It'll show you how many proxies are in here. What I usually do is a 3-to-1 for my ratio. So proxy to task ratio is, so for example, let's say we're running 200 tasks. I'll load maybe 600 proxies. You can do more as well. Sometimes I do more just to be on the safe side. That way, if there's any error with a proxy, TSB can swap out that proxy for another proxy in the proxy list. So you do want to make sure you're doing at least 3-to-1 minimum for your proxy to task ratio. Also, you can export your proxies and import them, going from one computer to another. You can delete all, and that's pretty much it for the proxy screen. Calendar will show you all the products coming out on sneakers. Like I said before, this is being generated from the proxy from your proxy list right here. This will just show you, the name of the shoe, a thumbnail, what method it is. Leo is basically like a 2-minute draw. Dan is a 10-minute draw. It looks like Nike's doing that more often now with drops. But it'll show you the method, style code, which is a SKU code, price, and then the release date. So you can come here and you can check it out. Maybe if you want to look at the pricing, or if you want to see what's coming out, you can just come to the calendar and refer to that. Cops will show any recent, cops that you got whenever being successful with your entries. It'll load them here. It'll say the name for the shoe or for the product, thumbnail of the image, method, email, size, the time you checked out, what profile checked out. You have the option to delete them as well for your actions. Or you can click here and click delete all. So they'll just show up here. That's self-explanatory. If you get any cops, you can refer here and see what account copped. Orders will pull any order numbers, like I showed you before in the account screen. Whenever you go down to actions all, you do orders all, it'll pull that order number and load it over here. You can also export your orders or import them as well. Settings, here you'll see your key for TSB. You can also set up your Discord webhook. Also, you can contact support. Plus and minus up here will change the font size. Over here will be the default region. You're going to make sure that's selected for whatever region you're living in. Cookie jar. For NSWB8, it's not really used anymore. Before in the past, you had to generate cookies whenever running tasks. You can still do it just to be on the safe side, but for the most part, it's not used. So we don't really have to go over this. You can export and import them. Then you can select the proxy list. Whenever I was generating cookies, I would use ISPs just because they're quicker. But that's pretty much it for TSB. If there's any other questions you guys have, anything I didn't go over, or a question for anything I went over, leave it down in the comments. And just go ahead and hit that subscribe button, leave a like, look out for my next videos.